Hello again, Steve here with a few comments about the importance of leadership. This is talked a lot about in courses that we do and so on, that we got to be, it's a good idea to be strong leaders, not only for if we're going to be running departments or starting a company or starting a family or even just conducting ourselves in a way that's helpful for our own growth in a way, right? Now, a lot of times we use the term authority to say, well, that's the authority over there, or we have to respect authority, or our parents are the authority, or whatever like this, right? Well, that's an important word, I think, because if we look at the origins of it, we see the word author in there, right? An author, in its etymology, basically means the one who caused or created something. So the author of a book, obviously a good example, right? So authority just means basically the condition or quality of. So somebody who's an authority, I like to go back to the source as far back as I can, anyways, the source of the etymology of a certain word. The importance of that is one who has authority should be an author and having the quality of that, so that people know that. The creator of. But a lot of times words get changed over time because it's convenient, right? Because people, somebody who's the author of something, somebody who created, say, an organization, well, then they will put in or hire in substitutes, deputies or whatever to run it, and they give that authority over to them. But it's kind of a pseudo authority in that, and it gets over time, it gets melted down and perverted all the way, such that the natural order of organizations and authorship rather, gets diluted to the point where it's really becomes fakery. And I use examples of what happens in large organizations and in societies a lot, especially lately, but probably always, is you have organizations like unions and um, people who agitate for changes, such that the merit of genuine leadership is put aside. So certain groups, like certain ethnic groups, get promoted ahead of certain one gender gets promoted over another, and the natural merit selecting leadership authority gets diluted down to the point where there's all kinds of government regulatory hedging for one group to gain power over another. And in a way, this is another form of leadership, but it's rather destructive, because it's not the way it would go. So in other words, that produces a regression rather than a progression, because it's taking out the most brilliant. And I see this happening a lot of times we see it, for example, on YouTube, where, people who are completely unknowns, but they're energetic, they're smart, they create a lot of content, it's a lot of original content, they get views way up. Whereas mainstream media, who has all kinds of organizational structures, but you see it's full of all kinds of diversity mandates and promotion of people because they're this race or they're that color or they're whatever, that sex or whatever. And so merit then is flushed out. And of course, the people who really have the strong tendency to be able to lead themselves, they run off and they do these other their own thing sometimes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and once again, no, I'm not claiming that this stuff is true. This is what I put out, is I put out ideas to hopefully, create more questions in people's minds than anything else. Now, I drew up this very little messy looking little pyramid of a thing here, which is to demonstrate a hierarchy. So we have at the top, we have leader, right? And leader, which is interesting, we see the word lead in there. And lead is this very heavy, dense, unalterable almost. It's very solid. It stands as very solid. It's put together quite well, right? So I suspect that in the origin of the word, that would be related, probably. I don't know. Maybe not. But nevertheless, you see in the etymology, you can see a guide and so on. So a leader is one who, true leadership, I would say, is more of almost like it's ministry. It's almost like serving, because it's got to serve something. It starts off individually, right? We put ourselves together before we can put any organization together. Otherwise, it's going to implode. But what happens is, because we are a tribal species, like many of the higher or more advanced, you might say, species of the animal world, they tend to be tribal, hierarchical. And there is this gravitation or this admiration or this respect for those who are the leaders in the group. And generally there will be, in any group, there'll be one which is considered the most senior in terms of the hierarchy. And from there, you can see this, how I drew it out. There's one at the top, and then there's several branches. And each of those branches will have sort of a sub-leader in them. And you see this in organizations. This is because organizations are just a parody of, or they're actually a natural outflow of human nature, of animal nature. Is you have this leader, and then you have these subgroups that have their own sub-leaders. And then from there, you have these tertiary branches that go off, where you have either sub-branches again or the individuals on the bottom. But in order for this to function, in order for this organization to function, there has to be leadership at every point. So there has to be leadership at the bottom, so-called, as well, because those people have got to be put together. If this guy at the top is trying to lead a bunch of people who are completely chaotic, it doesn't work. So each one of them, lead is going to attract lead. It's going to be most amenable to lead. To leadership is most amenable to leadership is those who could be led, because they understand leadership, the language of, if you will, of this service to something, right? And you look, and a lot of times it's not like, oh, people have got this, they've all thought about this. No. A wolf pack isn't constantly thinking about, well, why do we need leadership? No, they have a purpose, right? They got to find some meat to eat. They got to raise their puppies and whatnot. It's like it's bred into them. So they naturally fall into this hierarchy pattern and serve their function within it. Now, what happens, especially with humans, because humans are very, some humans are philosophical, and they will break from the hierarchy just because of, for whatever reason, very often disagreements. So you'll see sometimes there'll be a breakaway group here. And what that can be is that somebody down the chain somewhere just can't put up with it. Either leadership above is abusive, or it's incompetent, or something like that. Or it's unchallenging, or whatever it is. Or there's other opportunity somewhere else which is not being exploited. So somebody will break away, a well put together character often, or if he or she's not well put together, then they'll either have to or perish. So in order to survive, they got to be put together, and then they will attract others. They may even take away some of the group from here, because whenever this happens, there'll be a loyalty fraction, and some will stay with the one group, and some will stay with the other group. And you see this throughout history of how, and it's a natural order too, anyways, because a group, to be really functional, traditionally anyway, would be only so big. After so big, it becomes sort of like an empire at that point. And you see that empires, they've constantly problems at the periphery and breakaway districts and whatnot. And we see this in I'm not talking only about territorial empires, but just in groups in general. You see that eventually there's politics will grow, there is internal fighting and whatnot. And this is the nature, is this breakaway. And it's a natural way of propagating the tribes and spreading out and making sure that there's enough of a challenge going on, so that everybody's constantly strengthened. If everybody just fell under the same leader and that leader's ideas, then there wouldn't be growth of ideas, because it'd be this constant stifling going on, because it'd be one track thinking or whatever. So with the breakaway, it gives an opportunity for those who want to then try out different ways. You could fall under this leader or that leader, or a whole variety, or become your own, And I I think it's very important, this whole leadership thing, this whole discussion thing. It's really, when we really start to dig down deep into it, it's pretty amazing actually how, in intergalactic space, there probably are other intelligent beings, but what we're able to do with this minute amount of, space matter and somehow be conscious is really, really astounding. But how we can not only conduct our own lives, but actually organize groups of people under forms of leadership is absolutely amazing. So I think it's really important because, first of all, it's our way of being. Anytime that we discover or we think about how it is that we actually conduct our lives, if we realize this is the natural order of it, then it's probably a good idea to strengthen it. It's like if all of a sudden we discovered that, we're eating all this junk food and that's probably why we're getting fat and we're not healthy, but we're meant to be strong and so on. It would probably be a good idea to change it and to begin to strengthen ourselves. So leadership, to me, the importance of leadership is, this is how we get things done in the world. We get things done in the world by putting ourselves together, taking control of ourselves, realizing that we, the higher self of we, the whatever it is coming through the neofrontal cortex or whatever it is, can through living a principled life, can say, okay, I'm going to go in this direction, even though my impulses are maybe telling me I want to eat all these cupcakes. Well, no, I'm going to say I'm not. That's probably not good for me. So I'm going to go and I'm going to eat a better life. I'm going to eat something better or whatever. So we can make decisions in our own lives to become stronger and to build something stronger. And then when we eventually, if we set out in the world to create something, build a business, build a family, take on leadership roles within our organizations or whatever, we have the strength within ourselves to stand up for what's right, for what's to what direction we've pre-thought it, and we're strong within ourselves. We're emotionally strong, we're mentally strong, we're physically strong to take on those leadership roles. And without people to do that, we fall apart. We become, first of all, I think we become each for our own, which is not good in the long run either. But most of all, we don't get anything grand done in the world. We don't have, think about all the things that we get to benefit from. All of our infrastructure and our innovation and this iPhone here and everything that I look at in this room, these were all constructed by teams of people working together. And all of that requires leadership. Sure, it requires teamwork, but in order to have teamwork to function, there has to be leadership. And leadership at every level. Leadership right at the top, but leadership all the way down of people who are put together who can actually conduct themselves in an orderly manner. And that's an important discussion. I know there's no real answers here, and that's not my intention. Hopefully there are questions, and along the lines of the importance of leadership. Steve here again, great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye for now.